All right, KMR, Kyle Mohan Racing. Welcome back to the channel. Gonna do some updates on our Hybrid Renesis multi-port motor. So if you're watching the channel for the first time, check out some of the links below, catch up to date on this motor build. And if you're following the channel, then I'm sure everybody's waiting for updates, wants to know what we're doing with the project, and there's been a lot of questions coming through, so I'll try to answer some of the questions and fill everybody in on where this thing's going and what we're doing with it. So one of the biggest questions I get, or just comments I've been seeing lately, is, oh, it failed, or oh, we gave up on it. And I think that's so far from the truth, and I think most of the people that make that comment probably don't realize that this is just another one of these motors that we've built. And the first one we did was at Mazdatrix and ran in the Moto IQ Touring Car Series and actually placed first in the West Coast Championship and had a full feature done on both the motor and the car in Moto IQ. So if you actually go out there and look some of that up or check some of the older videos, you can see that not only is it a project that we've done before, but we've been successful with it before. So you don't have to worry about this one failing. This one's just sitting here because I need to make some money, and I've been looking for a chassis to put it in. And I think that's another great topic right there, is what am I going to put this motor in? Personally, we came up with this configuration in partnership with Mazdatrix while I was working at Mazdatrix full-time for the reasons of wanting to create a performance motor out of Renesis parts, and our goals were racing, reliability, and horsepower. We also wanted to use as many of the Renesis components as possible because at this point in time, they're very readily available compared to some of the older rotary components, RX-7 turbo parts, or the high compression naturally aspirated RX-7 parts from the 80s. So being able to utilize the lesser loved Renesis block as a base and rotors and a lot of those other parts creates a whole new potential in the rotary world where we're not relying on Mazda's old inventory or used parts, but we can create a hot rod or performance or race motor in a unique way out of the parts that are currently available from Mazda and on the shelf at places like Mazda and Mazdatrix. Although it does take a little bit of machine work, I would say that in most cases, if you're building a high-performance RX-7, you're doing some machine work on the motor. So I think the goals became to utilize as much as we could out of the Renesis, not necessarily for it going back into an RX-8, which it totally can, but for hot rod builds, SCCA cars, drift cars, drag cars, time attack cars, buggies. Literally put this thing in your old Repu truck. Put this in the old classic Mazda or Datsun. This is a high performance motor build that's based off of components that most people throw away. So that's really where we were going with it. And I know everybody keeps saying, oh, will it drop right into my RX-8? Yes. Will it run on the factory computer? Yeah, I believe so, but I've never done it. But those were never our goals. So it's been really hard for me to pick a chassis because my whole intention was probably to build more of a race car or a hot rod with this motor than necessarily just getting this motor back into an RX-8. But as friends and followers and subscribers and the guys up at Mazdatrix have gradually been convincing me and talking to me that I kind of now would also like to see if one of these multi-port motors could be put right back into a RX-8 and what kind of horsepower gains or issues we might see. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 chassis, 3 ideas. One is literally I would love to build a rotary hot rod. I know that's a very unique topic, but like a 1930s or 40s, some kind of classic American iron, drop in a rotary, big exhaust, big turbos, big brap, make everybody angry at me because you're basically combining two things that never really go together, rotaries and classic hot rods. And it's kind of a neat idea. I almost came up on a chassis. It kind of fell through. We'll see what happens there. So that idea has kind of passed, but it's still something I was really interested in. And that would lend the opportunity to run it in a naturally aspirated configuration and a boosted configuration. So it was a way that I could test both ideas and utilize the motor in something I would enjoy. But like I said, that kind of hasn't transpired, and that's one of the reasons this motor sat around is lack of funds, lack of chassis. So the second idea I had is I've got a salvage title FD3S, and I figured that would make the internet about as mad as anybody in the Rotary community, basically putting a Renesis motor into an FD3S, because why would you ever do that? Well, I think this motor will actually make more horsepower per boost number than the typical FD3S motor. So it'd be really cool to take a motor that's very unique like this, and generally you would never put into an FD. I mean, I wouldn't even really recommend it, but I had the chassis and I have this motor, and I was thinking, man, that would be kind of cool to just use the FD chassis as the test bed and then use the multi-port hybrid motor as the motor and basically see what we get, what we come up with, just have fun with it, because I love third-gen RX-7s. I mean, for just the most beautiful RX-7, in my opinion, that Mazda made. And there's a lot of aftermarket support, and I've got one of the chassis, and it just seemed like that could be a fun hot rod race car and way to develop the package. So I've gradually been convincing myself that that might be a good idea, and I'd love to have everybody's opinion on what I should put this in. Those are my first two options. And then just the other day, lo and behold, a customer had an RX-8 that had some problems, and it looks like I'm going to be picking up that car. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, maybe there is a chance I could put this hybrid Renesis configuration RX-7 multi-port motor into an RX-8. And then we could answer some of those other questions, like, will it run on the OEM ECU? I mean, we believe it will, but we don't know anybody that's done it. So there's always those questions. And then obviously the exhaust is kind of, I think, the third topic we'll touch on tonight. The exhaust is difficult, but it's not that difficult. We had a customer make an exhaust recently out of an OBX and Racing Beat parts. They took a Racing Beat flange and then an OBX eBay header, and basically just put little joiners, little runners, out to the existing pipes, and that not only solved the problems of clearing the motor mount, but was probably the cheapest and simplest way I've seen any customers or anybody do a header for this configuration. And I've got some pictures of it. So next video will be talking about header configurations, that particular customer's configuration and where that is going as well. And again, I'd like to point out that this isn't the only one of these motors. I know there's these configurations of motors running in Australia and some other parts of the world. And we've got a couple customers here in the US that are developing these motors and projects. And like I said, Mazdatrix already built a couple of these and had great success. So in my opinion, there is no question about the runnability, usability, operational configuration in these motors. It's really just more of what people want to do. If you're just looking to rebuild a RX-8, then this is probably not the basic rebuild for you. This is a high-performance build that's meant to be in the high-performance category. Raced, off-road used, some kind of track configuration or a hot rod. It wasn't our intent originally to make this as a replacement or a fix-all for the Renesis motor in the RX-8 chassis. But that idea is not that bad. And if you're not talking about smog or the issues we have here in the US, which obviously all of my cars pass smog, and all the cars that don't, I race on professional racetracks. But I think if that is not your concern, then this might actually be a way to get around a lot of those fail points that the Renesis has, the heat buildup in the exhaust, short-term motor life, low horsepower, the inability to boost. A lot of those issues get resolved really quick when you jump into the multi-port configuration and add any type of block strengthening like studding, which is totally doable on these Renesis blocks or the hybrid configuration block. So I hope this brings this motor back into the channel. I wheeled it out from the trailer. Basically, we had it out at 7 stock recently, and so we did the show at 7 stock with the motor and then brought it back into the shop. And I think that instead of putting it back into the closet, we'll keep it out, and we'll try to talk about the exhaust configuration in this next week. So watch for another video soon. And if anybody has any more questions, comment below. We'll try to do a follow-up on questions and comments. And, you tell me. I got 3 different ideas for chassis. FD3S, and get weird with an FD. American Hot Rod Iron, which I don't know if I can swing that one anymore. The chassis didn't come through, but you never know. See what the internet says. Or it looks like I do have access to a RX8 chassis, and it might be neat to just see what happens if we drop it into an RX8. So that's a wrap. I appreciate everybody who follows the channel. I appreciate everybody who asks questions and comments. Even if you're one of the ones that's like, hey, I think the project's dead. No, I still appreciate that because you're pushing me to get this project back out and get it underway. We got a lot of stuff going at KMR and Mazdatrix, and I'd love to see exactly what this motor will do in naturally aspirated trim, because I never have. And I'd love to, again, show everybody how great of a motor this operates in boosted configuration. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. KMR.